Welcome into week 2. I want to use the word celebrate, Jorge. I want to celebrate, of course, the week 2 NFL season, but more importantly, we want to celebrate the lives that were lost 13 years ago, 23 years ago. My mistake. Wow, time flies, unfortunately. 9/11 has a special place in many of our hearts. We here at Fantasy and Frames want to make sure that we give the time needed. We could probably give the entire episode to those amazing people that lost their lives. And to anyone out there that was impacted by that, we want to let you know that we're here thinking about you. And yet we know this can be a time for us to console, if you will. So we have a little something for you before we get started.
Nate, thank you. To piggyback off that before we get going on today's show, that expression, where were you when X event in history happened? I remember vividly sitting. I just had come out of organic chemistry, and I was friends with the admin assistant for the chemistry department, and I would go in after class every time and talk about how much organic chemistry sucks. And and then one of the teachers came in and was like, a plane flew into one of the towers, and I thought to myself, oh, like a Cessna, like a little, like a little plane that just went off course. And then obviously we know what happened. And then being in the nation's capital, driving home after they dismissed school, hearing on the radio about the attack on the Pentagon. I mean, it was a surreal day, and I try to make it a point every 9/11 to turn on the news and watch a good chunk of it because, you just never forget it. And like you said it best, one of the things we can do in times like this is to celebrate the people who, and their lives who were, for the lives that were lost, because, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. And we really just here at Fantasy and Frames wanted to make sure that we conveyed our condolences, while at the same time wanted to honor them in the brightest, most way possible. And so for those who are affected, who are watching or listening to our show, just know that our thoughts and prayers are always with you. And as the imagery showed on the screen just now, we will never forget.
It's true. Like I said, very surreal day. The entire day was full of just kind of disbelief, confusion. But you know what helped get America back on board and really try to stabilize and bring a little bit of normality to it was baseball. And baseball was going strong as baseball goes now. We, on the other hand, have a chance to bring you fantasy football content. Not quite the New York Yankees and George Bush throwing out the first pitch, but we will try our damnedest. So I sent same sentiments as you, Jorge, but let's get started for week 2. The other thing we're going to celebrate, week 2 of the fantasy football season. Let's hit it. Welcome to Fourth and Frames. This is Nate Marcum. Joining me this week is Jorge Edwards. Not with us, unfortunately. Rhett Manuel, Drew Scott. Rhett Manuel, want to let you know we are thinking of you as well, as Rhett and his family have a storm coming their way. I hope all is well. Drew gets to celebrate the game of baseball, as we were talking about, with his son, and family always comes first in with Fantasy and Frames. But speaking of family, I have my brother with me tonight, Jorge Edwards. What's up, buddy?
I was about to say, oh, you've been holding out on me, not telling me all the members of your family that are nearby. I know.
Yes, here's this. So
exactly. What's up, man? It's great to be on. Great to be back on the show and talking shop with you, like we always do and always have in the past. And just a week ago, you and I were having some fun in Las Vegas. You getting ready for your FFPC draft, man?
Nope. It's the prime time. You have to separate the NFFC.
NFFC. Sorry,
yes.
Excuse me.
Shout out to the NFFC.
How did it go week one for you after your draft last week?
I am first overall in my division, and I am, I believe, 16th out of about 1,200 overall. So, I mean, decent. There's still room for improvement, of course, but yeah, it's people, if they ask and I tell them and I get excited, the same sentiments is, that's week one, calm down. But guess what? I don't want to calm down, because if I was sitting in 1,088th place, I don't want you telling me, oh, there's a long season to go. Yeah, I know. There's also a long season for me to try to maintain and sit there, because there's a lot of money, 250 grand on the line. If I were to pull out that unmanageable task, we will have more graphics. I'll even add to your little to your great collection behind you. Who knows? I don't know. Like they say, you never know. You won't know that I won the lottery, but there will be clues, and there will be a lot of them for sure. Yeah. But yeah, went well. How'd your week one go as a whole?
It went well. So as you know, you and I both have played in the Kings Classic, specifically now with the Dick Butkus IDP division.
Yeah.
And week one went against Leo McNeely,
champion.
Yeah, went. I think he went undefeated. No, he lost one
game.
But,
yep.
Yeah. It was close. I ended up losing by like 10 points, but I'm on your case, Leo. I'm going to catch you, and I'm going to beat you, and that's just how it's going to be this year. So yeah, that's how
there
I'm
you
doing.
go. Well, good, man. I was hoping I knew that you had Jaden Daniels. I knew that would be a good start. In a team that deep, 30-something players. I can't remember who you have, but
a lot.
There's a ton.
I have Puka Nacua, which not so great, but
yeah,
we'll get into that a little bit later.
No, we're not the studs, Chris Battistella. You are the stud. You are so beneficial. You had a couple things working in your favor. Number one, you didn't have to watch the debate last night, and two, I wish you were here with us right now. Thank you for always being a good friend. But let's what was I gonna say? Yeah, let's answer a couple questions before we get going, because we're gonna be just you and I. Yep. I'm not gonna draw this out like it's gonna be, we got to make it work. But I like the sounds of some of these questions, because they're hitting right close to home, because you and I did a ton of mock drafts in preparation for the prime time that I was doing. And Ezekiel's first question is one that luckily I didn't have to spend too much waiver capital or zero, because I drafted DeMarcus Robinson, or in this case, DeMarcus Robinson or Tyler Johnson. I'll let you take your first crack at it. Full PPR.
I'm going DeMarcus Robinson. He I think is he is the guy who's going to be your Puka Nacua insurance, even when Nacua and Cooper Kupp were both on the field last year. The Rams still heavily utilized DeMarcus Robinson. He had good yardage. He had good fantasy output in half PPR, so that even tells you what you're going to get in full PPR. Tyler Johnson, he looked good on Sunday. I'm not going to lie and say he didn't. He had that one or two good receptions that they, emphasized on Sunday Night Football, but it's DeMarcus Robinson. He has more of the chemistry with Matt Stafford, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, I would say that it's going to be the lost targets as a result of Puka's injury is going to be, of course, Kupp's going to see his normal share. Then DeMarcus Robinson. I think Colby Parkinson could pretty decent uptick. I do like Tyler Johnson. I will be the first to say it. I am just not thrilled with the Rams offense going forward. as a whole with some of these ancillary pieces, because as we'll get to in the news and notes, it's not just Puka they lost, but they've also lost, 2 offensive linemen and like I said, we'll talk about that, but Joe Noteboom and Steve Avila, both on the IR as well. That offensive line's in trouble, and it's going to take a lot. That's why I think, short to intermediate stuff to like Colby Parkinson and Cooper Kupp are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of that.
100%. Let's get to the next question here. We got here from Paul Vo. He wants to know Eckler, Demarcus Robinson, or Rashid Shaheed start one. Nate, why don't you tell Paul what you think here?
Despite what I think a lot of people were highlighting is that Eckler looked so much better than Brian Robinson at times. I still think that's Brian Robinson's offense. We'll talk a little bit about him too during this. I just touched on the offensive line for the Rams, and unfortunately, Rashid Shaheed was the same, but that offensive line seemed to piece it together a little bit better than I had expected. They obviously Derek Carr had a monster of a game, and I think I'm gonna lean Shaheed. I didn't think that in week 2 of the season I would be picking number 1. Sorry, Paul, that you're having to make this decision between those 3, unfortunately. But yeah, I think I'm gonna lead Rashid Shaheed this case. What say you?
Yeah, it helps to have some motivation when you have your future successor, I believe, behind you, chomping at the bits, and Spencer Rattler. So yeah, Derek Carr looked motivated. He looked very motivated on Sunday. So I think I'm going to go Shaheed here. Also Eckler, I think I made my point pretty clear on our kickoff show on Sunday. Like it's the Brian Robinson show. Yes, their snaps were somewhat comparable, but you just saw Robinson emphasize a lot more. But that's not the question. DeMarcus Robinson, he's not the number 1 target. I think Rashid Shaheed and this Saints offense is starting to take off here.
Yeah, Clint Kubiak having them in as much motion as he did really seemed to work wonders. Granted, 1 week sample size, but still nice to see.
Got a question from Chris Battisell. Like you touched on this already. Are any of the Packers wide receivers startable with Willis? So you'll hear from me one that is not, which it knife to the gut. But if I had to pick anybody, it would be Jaden Reed, just because I don't know. I think inexperienced quarterback, whenever I think about rookie quarterback or inexperienced quarterback, I always think get the ball out quick, and who better to get the ball out quick than your slot wide receiver? So give me Jaden Reed versus, assuming that he's going to have enough accuracy to get it down the field to Christian Watson.
That's what I look. I think Jaden Reed's the only one that I'm even considering, and I like I like a healthy Christian Watson. That's the real bummer. I don't think I sell any of them yet. I'd hold as long as you can, or at least for the next 3 weeks. But the person you're going to talk about is one that I think I can drop, but we will get there. And so maybe before we get there, let's jump around the rest of the NFL and let's take a little bit of some of the news and notes in that we've seen so far. And starting in Miami, Raheem Mostert ruled out. Devin Achane is game time decision, which is promising. If you had to make your pick right now, Jorge, let's say that Achane is on a pitch count. I know you hit it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Jalen Wright or Jeff Wilson, if you could choose either or.
My heart says Jalen Wright. My mind says Jeff Wilson, as he got the majority of the touches, even though Jalen Wright was inactive. So by default, right? I want to go back to one thing right here from Crispy. That's a big assumption from Jade. No shit, it's a big assumption. We're 1 week into the season. What are you gonna say? And then going back to Ezekiel's question, would you pick JSN or DeMarcus Robinson? Great question. I'm still holding the faith on JSN. What do you think here, Nate?
Yeah, I am. I still worry that I think we thought this Ryan Grubb offense was going to be more up tempo, but there's one positive thing. It's a complete negative, but it's positive for JSN is that Kenneth Walker didn't practice today with that abdominal injury that he left week 1 with. And so if he's out, I could see an emphasis on the pass much more than relying on Zach Charbonnet to carry the load. So I think JSN in a surprise sneaky move this week is going to have the higher upside between the two. So.
But piggybacking off of your question, what are your thoughts? Jalen Wright or Jeff Wilson this week?
I have the exact same feeling as you. I want to say Jalen Wright has the upside to absolutely smash in a situation where he gets enough workload. But especially against Buffalo, that defense doesn't impress me all that much. Yeah. But I do think it's Jeff Wilson that probably sees the majority. That being said, I'm really optimistic and hopeful that it's HN is going to be fine to go. He's going to get, he's not going to get 25 carries. He's going to get probably 10 carries. I hope he just plays through and he doesn't get hurt. Part of me wants him to sit out week 2, get 10 days worth of recovery instead of just, a couple days, and come back next week healthy and actually give all of us, I say me because I'm selfish and I have him, but give all of us a healthy rest of the season. Unhealthy, David Njoku, he's out. I don't think there's a tight end that, I don't know, Cleveland, that's the last thing they need. They already look pretty bad as far as Deshaun Watson's case goes. Who's the biggest, who benefits more? Does Amari benefit more? Jerry Jeudy? Jerome Ford? Nobody? Everybody?
Man, that's a great question. I don't think anybody is the thing. It's like, yes, that was a great question. That's why
I wrote it down and everything.
Yes, you did. I don't think anybody is in an advantageous spot as long as Deshaun Watson is throwing the ball. So if anybody out of everybody you just mentioned, I think Jerome Ford is probably the guy. Colby Conway. Amari Cooper going to eat this week. Who's the quarterback? Because I don't see that. Barring some miraculous resurgence that he finds himself in 2019 form, it's hard for me to trust a receiving option for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Albert wants to know, and I'm intrigued by this too, is Dobbins a sell high? And I guess that a lot of that goes down to what, a value of a player is only as good as what someone will give you. And so, of course, selling high means that someone's offered something substantial. I hate the idea of getting rid of Dobbins because what we've seen so far is that their first round investment of Joe Walt has proven and paid extreme dividends on, first and foremost, pass protection, as he showed against Max Crosby. But 2, it even further solidifies a running game that I think can be dynamic. We saw that with JK. He had 10 carries for 135 yards. So, I mean, I don't expect that to replicate. But Gus looked gassed. Gus Bus looked like he was out of gas. JK didn't really look great. Let's be honest. He didn't look like this explosive dynamic. He looked like he, was, I don't know, just something wasn't perfectly right. But at the same time, the volume's going to be there. I just don't know. I don't know what the value and return that you would say would be good. Let's say someone offered, would you take Terry McLaurin for J.K. Dobbins?
Yes, I would. I still think there are brighter days ahead for McLaurin. Yeah.
Me too. What about, would you trade, would you take someone like Puka Nacua if someone was looking and they needed it?
In Dynasty, absolutely. For redraft?
It's redraft.
No, I would not. I would keep Dobbins.
Gotcha. Yeah. I like this. Gibser's response to Colby is Amari's going to eat a sandwich. Yep. You know what I miss about, I know this is a weird topic. During COVID, obviously everybody had the old TikTok and everything going. There was one particular channel where the guy would roll dice and he would make a sandwich, and it was whatever combination the dice rolled. And there were some nasty ones. I'm a 45-year-old man, and I was enamored with watching this dude eat the nastiest looking sandwiches and some of the best creations ever. But I digress. So Amari, yes, maybe we'll eat a sandwich. Ezekiel wants to know your thoughts on Alec Pierce.
Man, 3 targets or 3 receptions for 40 yards? I'm just spitballing here. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but that sounds about right.
We don't need exact.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, exactly. Numbers.
We don't deal in exacts around here.
No, exactly.
125. Three targets for 125 yards.
You know, it would we be having this conversation about Alec Pierce if Anthony Richardson hit Adonai Mitchell in the end zone when he was wide open? I don't think we would be. That's a lot. That's a lot of people who are picking him up or dropping fab, like serious fab on Alec Pierce. That's 3 targets on a home run ball. That's a lot to invest, I think, going forward. Maybe bookmark him, but I think the future is with Adonai Mitchell, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think the scariest thing of all is that 3 targets represents a 15% target share in that offense. That's the scary part that I think that, we're trying to find Anthony Richardson supporting not only Michael Pittman and AD Mitchell, but also Alec Pierce. There's going to be an odd man out, maybe 2 odd men out every single week. Maybe you need to get that sandwich maker on the line, get some of them dice he has and roll the dice on one of the 3 and see where it lands and see what you get week in, week out.
So let me ask you a question. If once Josh Downs comes back, right?
Yep.
If you, and I won't hold you to this, weeks from now when that actually happens. Who's the odd man out? Is it Mitchell, Downs, or Pittman?
Well, it's not.
It's not going to be Pittman, right? It's
not going to be Pittman. I don't think it's going to be AD Mitchell because I think he's going to play himself into a significant role in everything. I don't know. It doesn't mesh well as far as his skill set, Josh Downs, of where he should play necessarily over anybody. But I think they try to find a way to get, those 3 on the field much more than, and Alec Pierce is a kind of a rotational guy, but it's like, if you look at the side, Gypser says Pierce does. He has 1 top 15 finish, and then he does vanish. But that's this offense for you as a whole. I don't expect. I love pieces of it, but I worry about the floor play for a lot of these wide receivers week in and week out. Michael Pittman included, which hurts me to say because I like Pittman a lot. But let's see the next list name. We kind of touched on Puka Nacua, placed on the IR. Obviously, a lot of the questions about DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Colby Parkinson. I think all of them trend up. I touched on the offensive line concerns, and I think that kind of negates some of the inflation, but not too terribly bad. Any addition or anything to add to the Puka Nacua Ram situation?
Well, I don't know if this is when you wanted to get into it, but it's not just, the wider, Puka Nacua going down. It's like members of the offensive line are starting to drop. There's quite a bit of few injuries piling up here for the Rams. And man, it just sucks. I mean, if you are somebody who got Cooper Kupp in your 4th round of your draft because other people were too scared because of his injury history of the past couple of years, like, pat yourself on the back with like both your hands, because like just hug yourself or pat yourself on the back or do both at the same time.
Easy. Yeah. No injuries.
No, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's great value you got in your drafts there, obviously.
Gotcha. Another wide receiver banged up, didn't practice. Jordan Addison injured the other foot. So he's got 2 different two different legs have been injured at different times. He didn't practice today, trending in the wrong direction for sure. I think it's crazy to say, but Sam Darnold didn't look terrible in week 1. Cole, are you surprised that he didn't look as that bad or what?
Yeah. Like, why did you get Brian Burns? What happened to Kayvon Thibodeau? Like, all these pieces on the defense should have been clicking, and they weren't. And I don't know what the hell that means. That being said, even with the defense playing at, like, let's just say, and this is a bit of an exaggeration, 30%, I still wouldn't expect Sam Darnold to have the game that he did. But I guess it's easy when you have Justin Jefferson and it's like, hey, just go catch this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. If there's a super deep name to maybe consider who should see snaps, will be Jalen Naylor. Let's say love it. But as far as healthy bodies and someone on the field, that's the name that I would, kind of look towards.
So we got a question here from Ezekiel. What wire pickup would you all go for running back options? It's funny that you should mention that, because if you head over to our website, fantasyandframes.com, our own Erica Brown has put together 2 back-to-back fantastic waiver articles, putting the link in the YouTube chat now. Head over there, check that out. Follow her at America with a K, 108 over on X. Tons of great recommendations there. She was on Jordan Mason before Jordan Mason was on Jordan Mason, which apparently that was last Friday, not this coming Monday. But
right, exactly.
That's another topic.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of another topic, let's talk about San Francisco and CMC. He looks like another week. So Achilles tendonitis, I have had before, and it sucks. It sucks really bad. Like I saw him moving, and I'm astonished that he actually can walk at all with that. I mean, that's one of those situations where it's a pain tolerance thing. I know there's re-injury risk with his just general calf injury as a whole, but when it leads into Achilles tendonitis, do I think it's going to last longer than a couple weeks? Probably not. But what's your fear level? Are we at DEFCON? And you can educate everybody that it goes the opposite direction, right? Like DEFCON 1 is actually the worst, and DEFCON 5 is the lightest. Isn't that the way that goes?
Yeah, I think it's the opposite of the Fujita scale of tornadoes. Yes, for those who didn't know that either. So Christian McCaffrey, now this is off of like one of these feeds I saw earlier today. I think he said he's good to go. Yeah, exactly. Very smart to trust, untrustworthy.
Yeah.
On Instagram, yeah, because that's the source you want to go with, right? I believe Christian McCaffrey said that he seems like he's ready to go, or at least that's what he told reporters today. I don't buy it. I think that's just misdirection. So for those who missed out on Jordan Mason last week, who still have an opportunity to get Jordan Mason this week, I'd probably get Jordan Mason. And honestly, there's something fishy about this entire situation that makes me believe that, the 49ers, they did just fine against, which was arguably a decent defense last year in the New York Jets on Monday night. So I would get Jordan Mason, and I think they're not going to be in a rush to get Christian McCaffrey back on the field.
I don't either. That's what I think. And I mean, I do think that it's smart the 49ers have to see this as a whole, that they're Super Bowl contenders. Don't risk. Granted, they were still capable of winning a game with Jordan Mason. I just don't think Jordan Mason he's not Christian McCaffrey. Regardless of what we saw on Monday night, the volume will be there. I just don't trust every single week to be, CMC. Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins didn't practice today. Obviously, I think after last week, there was still concerns that he wasn't going to be ready to go this week. Joe Burrow, we saw him on the sideline stretching his wrist, flexing it constantly. Obviously, the play on the field was indicative of someone that might have a little bit of a hand injury, wrist injury. The reports came out that he was unable to pick up a water bottle. I watched the video. He just picks it up weird. It is what it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just didn't look, it didn't look like he was wincing over picking up a Gatorade bottle. It looked like he just grabbed it in an awkward spot, and it is what it is. Did you see the video? You know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea. No, I did not see that.
Then don't waste your time. Not a big deal.
Okay, fair enough.
But he was flexing his wrist a lot during the game. That's the area of concern for me, is it was constantly aggravating him.
So one of the things I remember reading over the offseason regarding his wrist injury, and I believe it was some type of like tendon that they said they had to repair from last year. I believe there was some type of wrist tendon. I remember reading somewhere that it was not so much the tendon that was the issue. It was like the actual bone structures of the wrist that kind of helped inflame the entire situation that led to his tendon injury. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you could repair the tendon, but if it's like your bone in your hand, like how your wrist is actually like comprised of bones, like that's a little scary. And now you're having this situation where he's flexing his wrist. Now, for all we know, he was just doing that because he likes flexing his wrists and whatever. But there is something to be said about that. Now, I will say last year, the Bengals also did start off slow.
Terrible.
Yeah. And then when he started to hit his stride, this is when he got hurt in that Baltimore game. So I don't know whether that is, I don't know whether what we're seeing with Cincinnati is a coaching issue or if it's a health issue for Burrow.
I don't know either, but I can tell you that for about 50% of the people that were in the Circa in Vegas survivor pool were gone because they picked the Bengals against the Patriots. And if you're in that and you didn't pick the Bengals, then you are halfway to a gigantic payday. So congratulations for that. Let's go to Chicago, where Caleb Williams wouldn't say had quite the fantastic season debut. In fact, actually, I would say it's the opposite of that, whatever that is. But when you get 94 yards passing and you still get a victory, who cares about the yardage? That being said, if he wants to increase the yardage, he needs a receiver to throw the ball to, and most likely it's not going to be Rome Odunze or potentially even Keenan Allen, who was, given a rest day, but at the same time, I worry if Keenan Allen came in with a heel injury, was banged up to leave the game, at what level, what percent he will be at. What does that take, your love for DJ Moore? Does it bring down Caleb? Where are you at on that whole situation?
I think this brings up DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson, to be honest with you. I think I will say very publicly, I am not a huge DeAndre Swift fan. He went from one of the best offensive lines in all of football with the Philadelphia Eagles to the Bears, which is not that. Mm-hmm. And you saw his lack of production last week. But again, it's one of those things where, you have these lack of receiving options, and it sucks because Keenan Allen would have a very favorable matchup this week versus Houston if he were healthy and good to go. But I think it's because of the lack of efficiency that you're seeing out of DeAndre Swift that you may see more of a 1-2 punch at the running back position with Roschon, or potentially even Khalil Herbert. That's the thing. That's the thing you don't know. You don't know who's going to get the share there. But if I had to pick, it'd be Roschon, just because you kind of get some of what you get with Khalil Herbert with DeAndre Swift. So kind of would want to mix it up a little bit there.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's kind of gross. I will say the one thing about the rushing attack, though, is the Bears' defense, their secondary is so good. If they can put the pressure on like they did, with towards the end of last season with Sweat and company, they could be in a lot of times where they don't have to pass it nearly as much, and you could get some good value out of 1, 2, maybe 1 or 2 different running backs there from a flex perspective. The news out of Baltimore is that Lamar Jackson returned to practice. That's a good thing. Jake Ferguson in Dallas says he's ready to go week 2. That requires some monitoring in my eyes. In Denver, Audric Estime went on the IR. I think that just further stokes the fire of Jaleel McLaughlin as being a potential, flex play week in and week out, with the upside of taking Javante's job and not having to even look over. Not that he was looking over his shoulder for Audric Estime, but another person to potentially occupy and cannibalize some of the snaps there. And then, like I said, we touched on Joe Noteboom and Steve Avila going to the IR for the Rams. So that pretty much wraps up the news and notes section. Anything else that I might have missed that you wanted to chit chat about?
No, I think we're good.
35 minutes of news and notes. I think that, yeah, but let's be honest. News and notes aside, all those things factor into a little bit of upside, but people are listening because they want to know, who do you recommend? Who do we play? Who we maybe not, who we're not playing? Who should we hold on to? In other words, who would you like to smash, pass, or stash? You got any type of cool drop?
No.
Womp. Try to set it up nice and everything, but
you did. It was good. I mean, kudos to you, but no.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Well, production values, again, that's what the 250 grand is going to go towards. We will have drops for everything. We will have wardrobe changes midway through. It's going to be pretty spectacular. So we need Devin Achan to play this week and put up 25 or 30 if we're going to get the new wardrobe stuff. But I want to start with you. And so let's break down some of the parameters here. And what we like to do is, like I said, when we're talking about the smash pass or the stash, and when we're smashing a player, someone that we like, at the wide receiver position outside of the top 20 through Fantasy Pros ECR, top 15 at the running back position, top 8 at tight end, and I'm saying or because you can pick any of those positions at the top 12 at quarterback. We're passing on players inside the top 35 at wide receiver, so a wide receiver 3 or better, a top 20 running back, basically a wide receiver 2 or better, top 12 tight end, and a top 20 quarterback. And then from a stash perspective, is someone that we'd like to hold on to for the rest of the season that's 50% or under rostered on Sleeper. Jorge, you have the floor. You smash it in week 2.
First of all, goddamn, all these rules.
We got a lot of rules. Are we
talking about Gremlins here? For those who get the movie reference from back in the late 80s?
They don't, but it's okay.
You get it though, right? And people in the chat.
Yes, of course I get it. I was a senior in college when 9/11 happened, and that says a lot about age right there. Is where were you? And many of the listeners and friends of ours will say they were in 3rd grade, and they don't. And I damn near had a career.
Yeah. Touche. Well, before I get to that, I'm going to pivot to this
question.
I got to start 2 wide receivers: Pickens, Cooper, or DK Metcalf, full PPR. I am in on Christian Gonzalez as a cornerback in real football, which means I am out on DK Metcalf this week in Seattle. So I would get you. I hate Amari Cooper though, but I mean the matchup, right? So Cooper and Pickens would be my 2.
Man, I do too. I hate fading Metcalf, but you're for the exact same reason. It's Christian Gonzalez, and if you want to go over to Fantasy and Frames and our plays and fades, I had the uneasy feeling of picking DK Metcalf as a result, because these are the names in Christian Gonzalez's career so far. He has went up against Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, to name a few. In those matchups, he has allowed a total of 13 catches for 117 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an INT. Can DK Metcalf buck that trend? Sure. Anybody can, because that's the whole point of, can he or can't he? But in this case, since you have 2, what I would say, good options in Pickens and Cooper, I would lean the same way.
All right. But by the way, people in the chat, if you've seen Gremlins, please let us know that we're not the only old ones here in the show. Thank you very much. But anyhow, to get to your question about who is a smash, right? That is what you asked me 5 minutes ago as I've been diverting the attention away from that question. It would be Chris Godwin versus the Detroit Lions going up against Carlton Davis. And like how I like to draw my comparisons between offensive players and defensive players and looking for the defensive player mismatch. Guess what Carlton Davis's NFL passer rating allowed was last week in week 1?
125.3.
I wish it was 125.3, or maybe I don't if I'm having Chris Godwin on my roster, because it was 154.2. So that is not bueno. When we look at the DVOA information, courtesy of FTN, the wide receiver 3, or in this case, the slot wide receiver in Chris Godwin, the Detroit Lions actually give up the the second most, or the most receiving yards per game to the slot wide receiver last week. So yeah, Chris Godwin is going to eat against Carlton Davis. So that's why he's my smash for this week.
There you go. I can't say I hate it. I had found a scenario of trying to focus on Lions and Eagles secondary, slot corners, etc., that seem to play favorably in the offensive hands. But I am going to go I'm going to be stingy here, Jorge. I'm going to take a couple different positions, quick little tidbit pieces about each one, because I want to obviously either hear myself talk, or 2, get these out so that people can agree with me and go, that makes sense. Let's start at the quarterback position. Last week, obviously, anybody that recommended Justin Fields is going to be cautious and careful not to recommend him again, but I'm going to do so against the Denver Broncos secondary that is dangerous with Pat Surtain. But outside of that, I still think Justin Fields is going to be able to do the one thing that catapults his value, which is run. And a lot of this is dependent upon Russell Wilson, of course, which I think the reports are that he is not going to play. Justin Fields will. Week 1, Justin Fields, 14 rush attempts at the quarterback position. Through StatHead, Pro Football Reference, I dated back to 2017, and I have typed in how many quarterbacks have had at least 10 rushing attempts and at least one, passing attempt, because they like to throw running backs into that situation. And in that instance, since 2017, there have been 188 of them. Of those 188, 72% of the quarterbacks with 10 rushing attempts has finished with at least 18 fantasy points, which is a borderline QB1 for fantasy. Last week, Denver allowed 30 yards and a touchdown to Geno Smith on the ground. Geno's not exactly as fleet of foot as Justin Fields. I am going out again week 2, Justin Fields, saying he's going to deliver as a QB1 on many people's bench because of the fear of a repeat from last week. Jorge, 2 more quick ones real fast. Your boy and my boy. Your boy, Brian Robinson Jr. Let's talk about last week. Obviously, we saw him give up, it was conceding some route running to Austin Eckler a little bit here and there. But what Brian Robinson did do, if you're looking just at the box score, is, as I noted, he left a little meat on that bone, because there was one play, catch and run from about the 30, I think, where he got tackled at the 1-yard line. Jaden Daniels runs it in. Another opportunity, he got stuffed on the 1. Jaden Daniels ran it in. If just one of those instances change, obviously Brian Robinson is in for a really, really heavy workload and a pretty high upside from a fantasy perspective. I love the matchup myself. I think the Giants, they don't really scare me. I thought they were going to be better. Last week seemed to be a little bit of a disappointment as a whole. Divisional game, sure, maybe that means something. And then last but not least, Jameson Williams. I'm just going to leave it right there. I'm just going to leave JMO. All he can do is disappoint many people. There's going to be a ton. It's either going to be a ton of I told you so's, or it's going to be quiet, and us Jameson Williams fans are going to continue to chugga right along. So those are my smash plays, and I know you might want statistics to back it up for Jameson Williams, but I'm not giving them to you. I'm just going to say, you know what? It's because.
There you go.
Why is the sky blue? I don't know. It just is. Ask Joe Dirt.
Another movie that I'm sure our audience gets right now. All 338 of you. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, one of the things that's been brought to, a lot of people's attention from the Sunday night game that definitely caught my eye, was you saw Jameson Williams catch that long touchdown pass down the left sideline, and my immediate thought was like, okay, cool, great, exciting play, but same old, right? What is different? What's different is you saw all the crossing routes, the intermediate routes that he was doing. He looked like a legit wide receiver who could do multiple things on the football field, which is what you want, for your first round pick in the NFL draft a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I think. Congratulations on that call, because I know you've been beating that drum for months. So congratulations on that paying off for you in week 1.
Yeah, it did. It's been, I figure, put your money where your mouth is. And I have him on both Kings Classic teams, the auction and the snake draft, as well as the prime time. So I figured, why not, right? Let's see what we can get.
Yep.
How about,
I'm sorry. I was going to say, for all 300 plus of you who are currently watching on the X machine, if you wouldn't mind heading over to YouTube, and whether you just create a Google account just for this purpose and then log out, cool. As long as you hit subscribe, we would really appreciate that. And if for some reason you want to keep watching, which why wouldn't you? Once you hit that notification bell, so that way you're notified when Fantasy and Frames and all of our plethora of shows, from fantasy football to fantasy hockey to DFS to you name it, you're notified when we pop out all that content for you, so that you can win your matchups and have fun, and most importantly, hang out with us. So very much for that.
Put your phone on mute, because it's going to be going off a lot constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, we nailed some smashes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we got to share a little bit of bad news, which is going to be a pass for week 2. Here's, again, like I said, these are guys that you're considering in that top 3 wide receiver, RB2 range. and then the tight end that's who knows at any point, and then a top 20 quarterback. So start me off. You kind of alluded to it earlier.
Yeah. So I don't know if this player fits any of the criteria. So, Rhett and
Solid.
Drew, suck it for this week. Just kidding. Love you guys. It's somebody who a lot of us were, including me, in Dynasty, and we're hoping in redraft he could, find a way to get on the field enough so that, he would be relevant in the passing game. No more Jordan Love. Therefore, no more need for Dontavian Wicks to be on your roster. You can safely drop him unless you have a super deep bench, which allows you to keep these guys. Okay, but I'd rather have Demarcus Robinson on my roster than Dontavian Wicks. We don't know what to expect from Malik Willis. I already talked to you about my theory, Chris Battistell, that Malik Willis will want to get the ball out quickly and get it to a slot wide receiver, aka Jaden Reed. And they got so many options ahead of him. He was already facing an uphill battle, referring to Dontavian Wicks, and this just does not help his case at all. So I'm definitely what is it? Passing.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
It's not some Gen Z or Gen whatever term. We're not bussing. We're not or discussing. We kept it simple for us old folks. And even still, you couldn't get past right.
Nope. Yep.
Get it together, Jorge. Get it together. All right. So, again, touch on a couple. Number one, earlier I said, Devin Achane, a game time decision. If you have another option, it does worry me. The risk of re-injury and re-aggravation to something, especially with Devin Achane, is extremely high. It is a true, I think, ceiling or no floor play for him this week. It's Thursday night, so he doesn't get the extended time to really kind of give you the good feels. He was moving around on the field, doing a couple plays today, so he's trending in the right direction. But again, that's one of those that it wouldn't shock me if he's 2 carries into the first quarter, re-aggravates, doesn't play the rest of the game, and you get 1.5 points out of him. And I hate to see that. So if I wish I had better options. Most do not when you take him as high as you did. I'm also going to consider fading. I'm going to is Michael Pittman. We just talked about it earlier. There's concern when Anthony Richardson has 3 targets, making up 15% of the target volume. We have an improving A.D. Mitchell. We have a running game that I get the feeling they're going to lean on, because I don't think the Green Bay offense, it is Green Bay. I didn't misspeak, did I? Indy and Green Bay. Yeah.
You're good. Yes.
Green Bay will, I get the feeling they're not going to be able to move the ball offensively. So I think it's going to be a run focus game for Indy. I worry about Pittman's floor and ceiling in this scenario. He could be lined up against Jair Alexander, which is, again, another poor matchup. Everything's just trending in the wrong direction. So if you have better options, if you're in a super deep league, you're starting Pittman. I get it. But 10, 12 team leagues, you have Jameson Williams on your bench like a dum-dum, but Jameson Williams over Michael Pittman. That's a really smart play.
Let me ask you a random question. So this has nothing. Well, it kind of has something to do with what you were just talking about, because I was paying attention.
Okay, that's good. Correlation, we'll say that's called.
Yeah, I mean loosely, but so Houston against Chicago.
Yep.
Tank Dell, the third receiving option there. Would you rather start Tank Dell or Michael Pittman this week?
Oh man, that is a tricky one, because I think Chicago's secondary might be a top 2 or 3 secondary in football. Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, both studs. Even Kyler Gordon, who's most likely going to be in the slot, against Diggs. But I'm going to probably lean Tank Dell over Pittman. I just trust that. I trust the passing volume will be there to support anything outside of just an outlier production. Like, I expect a long touchdown out of Pittman to be the saving grace,
right?
Versus, or at least any touchdown. Shouldn't say long touchdown. Even though that was Tank Dell's calling card last year, I think that it wouldn't shock me if Chicago does rebound offensively, even though they don't have some of their weapons. I still like Tank Dell in this scenario.
I want to pull up right now. If you just hold on for 1 second, Tank Dell's. Okay, this is exactly what I thought. So Michael Pittman this week. Remember last year it was like the home run ball to Michael Pittman. It's just Gardner Minshew kept on feeding him home run balls, which made him fantasy relevant. His catch percentage was garbage last week. 50% catch percentage, horrible. You go back to Tank Dell's, 62.7 better. So yeah, I think I'm on the same side of that. Start, sit, or play and fade with you.
That's a tricky one, but I mean, and I see like similar to what we saw last week in Houston. I think it's very capable that all three of them are hovering around the 20, 23, 22, 23% target number, and that's supportive of a play every single week, much more than 15% of a low production doesn't take much, but high passing volume in Houston, I'll take 20% of all day long.
And I also just want to point out quickly that no one in the chat has even mentioned that they've seen the movie Gremlins, which, what the hell, people? I know I brought this up earlier. We are not that old, but come on.
Is Gremlins a Christmas movie?
The first one is. Did the first one happen before Christmas or just during the winter season?
That's what he got for Christmas.
Then yes.
Wasn't it? Isn't that the gift?
Yeah, you're right, because there is the Christmas tree and the hiding in the Christmas tree of the actual Gremlins. Yes, you're right.
It's a
great
Mogwai.
Yep.
All right. Crap. Are we now the Gremlins? Last year was the other guys, which I like better than Gremlins.
I agree.
But
yeah, where's Craig Ruth when we need him to drop another guy?
Craig.
Seriously, come on, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could change these to don't feed after midnight, players that we want to fade. Don't get wet. I guess these are all fades because you don't want Gremlins, unless you want Gremlins, and then do all those things because they are definitely more fun than Gizmo or whatever. All right, we've talked about our smashes, we've talked about our passes. Now let's talk about some players that one of the comments earlier was anybody on the waiver wire that you're targeting. There was that running back, but is there anybody under 50% rostership on Sleeper that you're wanting to pick up and stash going forward?
So I actually did pay attention to the rules on this one. So you're welcome, everybody here on the Fourth and Frames, leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And he's at 20. He's at 25% rostership. He was only started in 5% of games last week. Going back to 2023, when targeted 6 times or more, he was getting you in PPR double-digit points. This past week against Minnesota, he was targeted 12 times for 11.8 PPR points. Look, it's gross, but you'll take the gross with Wan'Dale Robinson. This guy for PPR leagues is a monster. Let me back up. He's very, very good. I wouldn't say monster just yet. But, you look at Daniel Jones. Oh, my God. I wonder how long he's going to last as the quarterback. But, that's neither here nor there. The point is, even with a crap quarterback like Daniel Jones is smart enough. Hey, get Wan'Dale Robinson the ball because he's really effing good going over the middle and getting these catches and producing for you. Now, he only did get you 44 yards, which that's not so great. And he only had a 50% completion percentage, also not so great. But the target volume, again, PPR, get those points catching the ball. You gotta roll with Wan'Dale.
No, when you mentioned that last week about Wan'Dale, and he responded with the 12 targets. Granted, like you said, they're bad targets. They're short. His ceiling is non-existent as far as like blow you away. Going to put up 9 for 150 and 2 touchdowns. We know that it'll probably be 6 for 65, and maybe the touchdown. That's okay. I think that if you can average that out of a person right now, and you can pick them up off the waivers, That's a absolute victory. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But if you're looking for a, maybe a home run that could very easily just be sharing carries, we've talked a lot this offseason about Rachaad White in Tampa and how his ineffectiveness, boring, nothing between the tackles was going to eventually get surpassed. And I had my reservations. I didn't think Bucky Irving was really going to be something specifically, but if week one's an indicator, sure. Rachaad White out, had more rushing attempts, 15-9. But what he did with those was average a robust 2.07 yards per carry compared to Bucky Irving's 9 for 62. Yes, there's reason, like Rachaad White took every carry within the 5. Yes, he had more missed tackles for some of these other metrics that if you wanted to paint a picture that was rosy and leaned in his direction. But I will speak for the fans of Tampa. Towards the end of the end of that game, if you heard, they were chanting Bucky's name towards the end of that game. And I think that the management, coach, etc., had to hear that and had to think, okay, this is something going forward. So Bucky Irving, very low rostered, deepest leagues, of course, he's going to be owned. Dynasty leagues is going to be owned, but basic redraft, your home league that you win every year. You, the viewer, not you, Jorge, because I know you don't do that. But regardless, go out there, pick up Bucky Irving. Another name to potentially pick up, if available, is, we talked about earlier, Jalen Wright, Miami. Mostert's already hurt. Achan's already banged up. Jeff Wilson's not the answer. Jalen Wright in that offense could be dynamic, but he's right on the cusp. There's a lot of sleeper leagues, so it's easy to stay a little bit under that 50% threshold. I expect that after today's waivers and everything to pass, it'll probably start getting closer to that 60-70%.
Yep. I like both of these. I unfortunately had the displeasure of seeing Bucky Irving slice through Washington's interior defensive line and get those tough yards. They weren't even tough yards. They were like, after you, sir, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I love it, man. Jalen Wright, I think he was my number 2 ranked, or at least possibly my number 1 ranked rookie heading into the NFL draft. Which again, these rookie rankings you can find by all of us here who cover rookie coverage at fantasyandframes.com. Specifically, the people here at Fourth and Frames with Drew, Rhett, and Chris Battlestill did a great job this spring. Yeah, you when you saw him get drafted by Miami, it was like, yes. It kind of reminded you of the situation last year where Devin Achan got drafted to Miami, and you were like, yes, but Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, and then we saw what happened, right? And now it's like, Jalen Wright, yes, but it's Mostert and Devon Achan. So, and the corpse of Jeff Wilson just won't go away. So it's if he gets on the field, man, I think people are going to be running to the waiver wire next week, maxing out their fab bids, or at least coming close to it, because they're overreacting in week 3, which you should not be doing. You know why? Because you should be getting them now and putting them on your back.
Yeah,
and not
overreact after week 1 like the rest of us do and freak out. That's how you really fantasy football it. But to tie a bow on this and recap, our smash plays were a combination of Chris Godwin, Jameson Williams, Brian Robinson, Justin Fields. We're passing on Devin Achan, Michael Pittman Jr., Dontavian Wicks. We're stashing away Bucky Irving, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Wright. And I got to say, I pretty much think that wraps everything up. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't have you start for 45 seconds to rattle off everything we have going on at Fantasy and Frames. But the one thing I can tell you is tune in Sunday morning from 8 a.m. Central to 11 Central. I'm using Central Standard Time instead of Eastern Time. And have us rattle off every game. We have maybe a new little segment of This is Sparta, deciding who we're keeping and maybe who we're not going to put in our lineup. And we talk even IDP, which What's coming up next, Jorge?
What's coming up next is Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football show here at Fantasy and Frames, which, by the way, whether it's Dynasty 365, whether it's Fourth and Frames, whether it's Shoot the Gap, whether it's our waiver show, the Daily Fix, or DFS show, you can find all these shows under the Fantasy and Frames podcast. If you want to listen to us again, because we're just so much fun talking about gremlins and mogwais and gizmos and all sorts of stuff, download the Fantasy and Frames podcast, subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames podcast, and you can catch all these shows. They're all titled by show. So however you want to consume our content, we love it. We really would appreciate it if you head over to Fantasy and Frames' YouTube page and subscribe there, as well as head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out our rankings. Check out our articles. We just got stuff coming out all over the place. We got articles for college fantasy football. We got plays and fades and waivers for that. We got plays and fades for offense and defense, special teams, and kickers. I know kickers. I rank kickers, whatever kickers matter. We got rankings for IDP. Thank you. I don't believe you 1 second that you actually agree with that, but thank you for at least acknowledging it.
I just have a sign over there, courtesy of Trophy Smack, that says kickers are people too.
Is that Carrie's sign or is that your sign?
Carrie's sign. We won it at the expo, and Carrie has proudly displayed it and demonstrated it to our friends at Trophy Smack.
Fair enough. And then we got the Daily Fix, our DFS show with head of DFS, Mr. Keith Fleming, Joe Matz. And this season, they welcome Kevin Tompkins over there to help you with your DraftKings DFS lineups. We have a college prop betting show, the Stew with JT Brew with Justin Taylor, who will be on Shoot the Gap a little bit later. We have an NFL betting show, which will be aired tomorrow afternoon. We got the Dynasty evaluation with John McGlynn and Justin Taylor, who, congratulations to those two guys. They cracked over 2,300 views today during the middle of the afternoon. Just effing ridiculously awesome. Thank you for those who tuned in. And we even got a fantasy hockey show. We're branching into that this year, seeing testing the waters around the ice. If you download the YouTube Music app and you type in fantasy hockey, the Around the Ice podcast is the number 2 suggested podcast there. So definitely check that out. And I think I went over 58 seconds, but I don't care because it was worth it.
You did. You went like 2 minutes, but you had a lot to talk about. Final thoughts. Would you trade Jaden Daniels redraft for CJ Stroud?
No. I love Jaden Daniels, being the Commanders fan. I love the rushing upside. I do not like this guy having his helmet loosely attached to his body and seeing him take all these trucking hits. Like, this guy is going to get trucked all over the place, and I don't like that for his longevity. Whereas CJ Stroud, you know what you're getting, and it's a lot.
So you would trade or you wouldn't trade him? Because you made the case sound like you would trade Jaden Daniels.
I thought it was either or. I would trade Jaden Daniels for CJ Stroud. Yes, I would.
Okay, yeah, good. Reading. Now you know. Yes, I would trade Jaden Daniels for CJ Stroud myself, but I think that takes us out of here. And I'd like to leave us with it's a paraphrased quote by the one and only Eazy-E. What we're talking about may not be your reality, but it's ours. On behalf of Chris Battistel, toodles.